You are now listening to the A Dose of Disruption podcast, powered by Experian. Weekly compelling conversations on making money moves and growing your network. The place where you can learn to be you and do you all at the same time. I'm your host, Shelly Bell, and now, let's see what this week's Level Up looks like. What's up, y'all? Welcome back, season 2. Okay, so listen. You know what time it is. You know what time it is. Do you know what time it is? Somebody you know. Do you know what time it is? Somebody you know. It's time for the Shelly Brief. Shelly Brief. Shelly Brief. All right, y'all. So, lately, usually for the Shelly Briefs, I'm trying to give y'all, tidbits from the news, but I've also been just wanting to share like some things that I'm reflecting on from my journey. Because if you've been following me on social media, if you've been following some of the things that we're doing at BGV, you know that we've been going into a bunch of different amazing engagements. I was on a billboard for Nike. We're working with Kroger. We're working with Visa. We're working with, and I want to talk a little bit about the glow up. Okay. So when you, at every stage of your journey, you have questions. Like, am I doing this right? Is this, are we, does everybody get what I'm, like, then I reached a level. So first it was like, I got an idea I think should be in the world, right? And it was like, boom, idea in the world, let's go. Then it was like, ooh, okay, this is really taking off. I need other people in my idea. I need other people to help me get this off the ground. Then it was like, ooh, not these people. This team ain't gonna work. Cut them. Then it was like, ooh, but they're great people. I love them. Just not for this. And then it was like, okay, I'm gonna rock. I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna figure out processes. I was recently talking to an investor, amazing folks, and he was saying, sometimes people don't need to move into venture capital because, some businesses just don't need venture capital. Like, that's just not, what they need. And I was like, yeah, that's true. And I said, but the problem is that sometimes you'll hear that, right? And it'll be like, oh, well, the type of business that doesn't need venture capital is a restaurant because it doesn't scale quickly. But then all of a sudden you'll see like, oh, such investor funds X restaurant. You like, but I thought y'all didn't fund restaurants. Like, what's up with that? And then he gave me an example of, like, he started talking about, like, I totally get what you're saying because actually there's a restaurant that some funders I know are invested in. And he's like, but they figured out a process to scale. So they opened up 1 and they opened up 2 and 3 and so on and so forth. And I said, that is the key. The key is, have you figured out a process that is scalable? And are you thinking that you want to not just have 1 or 2 of them in a nice little area in your city, but you have figured out a process where you can create thousands of these with low overhead, without learning lessons on the investor's dime, right? So that started making me think about just like everything. Cause like now I'm like, ooh, that's really great advice to give to founders. Like, do you have a scalable process? So I think instead of looking at it like the business is not fundable or not venture backable, there's the reasons why it's not venture backable, right? And that's because it won't scale quickly because it doesn't have a process that will scale quickly. So take like just a regular one-off beauty salon, but then take the one where they did like I think there's one here called Solo, something like that. But there's a couple of them where it's like the space that houses a bunch of salons. Right now you can get to be your own salon owner within a space where you just pay rent like you're paying booth rent. It's a slightly upcharge because you went in a space by yourself, but you get a whole space by yourself to build out with your clients. That is scalable because now you got like 15, 20 whole businesses within a space where they can have whole clienteles, not just chairs, right? So like that's the difference between saying, ooh, I'm going to just build a salon, and that's not necessarily scalable because the overhead for the salon, you're going to have per chair, the rent is going to be lower. The customer value is not the same as having a one-off space. I mean, especially now in COVID. In the salon, you got a finite amount of people that can fit in there, a finite amount of people that are going to go to each chair, and you're going to have a finite number that you're going to be able to put on that chair. Versus saying like, hey, you can be a whole business owner, right? And you can come and be in this space. So imagine that goes from like 2 chairs across like 15 different spaces that are whole businesses bringing in a lot more revenue versus one space with 5-6 chairs and smaller chair booth rental, right? So, and then you could upcharge on a couple things, right? So that larger space where people get to be there in person, now you get to say, okay, you got to pay for electricity, part of that. I can factor that in with you. You got to pay for part of the water. It's just a whole different experience. So that's some of the differences. But anyway, I said all that to say that having a scalable process is the key. So, this glow up that everybody's seeing me go through has been like the fact that I have created a scalable process. And like once I created a process for what we do, I mapped that process to different communities that I could do it for. So it's like, oh, okay. At first it was like coming up with a thing, and it was like, oh, tinkering here, tweaking here, moving this, slide this, step back, look at it. Come back. That's not working. Tweak that, move that, put people here, take people out here. We need a tech product. Okay, boom. Tech product here. Put this on this. Okay, this is going to bring this amount of revenue. This is going to bring this amount of donations. Tweak. Ching, ting, 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 ting. Psh, right? And then there is a process that I can now go any neighborhood, any community, any city, state, country, and drop it. Right? So when you think about what you're doing, think about the process. Now, actually, I'm going to continue this on the next Shelly Brief that I have, because I just feel like I want to go into deeper about but the phases that you go through. So like I said, I went from like, ooh, this is great. People like it. Ooh, let's keep doing it. Then went to like, ooh, can't do it by myself. Bringing a team. Ooh, that's not the team. Let all them go. And then that's like, I'm just tinker with this for a little bit. I'm going to figure this out. And then like, bing, I struck a process that was scalable. And I'm like, ooh, now I need the right team. The team that could think the way I want them to think. The team, not necessarily the way I want them to think, but a team that could think in a way that will help me even scale the process bigger. And then that's where I went with it. But, I'm still like the person that likes to like tweak, tinker, ooh, let's see what that'll do. And now I'm having to like move into the space of like more just like leadership fully. Which is a really fun and some days not so fun, and just a roller coaster ride of kind of like me figuring out, like, I like to be super authentic and say whatever I want to say and all that, but it's not, I can't do all that. I can't be out here saying all the quote unquote things I want to say, because some of it is real raw, and needs more context in order to be fully understood. And at this level, it's more risky to not be fully understood than it used to be. And that actually is a challenge for me. I think I'm used to being misunderstood. Like, I'm used to talking a lot. That's my thing. Growing up, I always got talking on every single progress report ever. But the risk that I may be misunderstood and that may somehow jeopardize my company is huge. So I'm going to keep talking on that. But I'm fear-facing. People say, you're so fearless. I'm not fearless. I fear less because I'm fear-facing. And so I push for that. And so I always tell people, like, you look at your fears, you put the support system in place to move through them and to face them. And therefore, you will eventually fear less. But it's not a destination. It's not a final point. It's not you wake up one day and now you have no fears. That's not true. So the glow up is real. I'm loving it. I'm loving all the parts of the journey, and I'm learning so much about who I want to be as a leader through this process. And I'm going to continue to unpack some of that, because I like coming back and telling y'all what I learned while I was in the meeting, with Nike, or what I learned when I was in the meeting with Visa or Kroger or, Warby Parker, or like what I learned about how people to navigate things, the not so glamorous parts of it. Like I'm going to start sharing more of that with y'all. I feel like that's super valuable. If y'all are cool with that, tweet me. If you want to hear more about like the real raw journey of Shelly Bell through this podcast, tweet me and tell me so at I am Shelly Bell. And yeah, I appreciate y'all. All right, let's hop into this episode. All right, here we are with Michael Bruemmer, the Vice President of the Experian Data Breach Resolution Group. It's so awesome to talk to you because we never know who's handling the data breaches. Okay. It's like it's almost like the Wizard of Oz kind of thing where it's like this person is somewhere behind a curtain and we just hope they got our back.
That's right. Well, I'm not behind a curtain. I'm right here, Shelly.
Right. We love it. We love it. So we always start off with this question. Okay. You could be doing anything in the world. You could be the person who operates the stoplights. You could be the person who makes doorknobs. You could be climbing mountains, sewing baskets, building kites. But you are the VP of the Data Breach Group. Why this?
Well, I can tell you when I was growing up, I didn't dream to be what I am now, but I wish I had. And it's because there are three things that are really fun about what I do. One is the obvious social angle that consumers are in need. They have had a company lose their personal identity information, or some of it may have been stolen. We just don't know all the time. And so we're actually helping consumers, and it's a very highly regarded skill to be able to do that with whatever function you're performing. The second thing is the people and the team that I work with, both internally at Experian and some of our clients, are so easy to work with. They're so much fun, and we work very collaboratively. And I know a lot of people that do jobs can't say that. And then third, for me, I'm not a type of person that's going to sit around, and I want to be busy. And every day in our business, we're always busy, and it's always different. I hate to use the snowflake analogy, but each breach has its own nuance between the client, between the consumer, young and old, what was compromised, how we have to communicate with them and help them. And when you sit and listen, particularly since we'll have call centers that take calls, you sit and listen to some of those consumers that are asking for help, and you're sitting next to one of our agents who's helping them. It's the most heartwarming thing when the person says, "Oh my gosh," to the agent, "You have been so helpful. I was so scared, and you've given me the things to do to help protect myself. You're such a wonderful person." Of course, that warms my heart when we can do that.
Oh, that's so cool. What did you want to be when you grow up? What was your thing you wanted to be?
I can tell you, it was either I would have loved to have been an astronaut because I thought it was the coolest thing. And being 7 or 8 years old when we first went to the moon, it was really pretty cool. But I didn't have the engineering, technical math mindset. I ended up getting my degree in economics, and I use it. That's one of the things I tell my kids every day. I use what I learned in college every single day.
Yeah, no, that's so great to hear. So I'm a computer scientist, and I think for me, being an engineer helps me understand how to solve complex problems. So I also feel like I use that every day as well. Like, and there's an interesting intersection, I think, in between like engineering and entrepreneurship, where like solving problems is just like the way to go. So I think that's interesting, looking at like understanding the economy, understanding the economics, and how that sits like clearly like intersects with the like managing the data breaches or helping people protect themselves. I feel like that's like such a clear connection.
Yeah. It is. And the one thing that I'm very appreciative of, I work for Dell, and that's the reason why I got to Austin in the first place. Before I got to Dell, I didn't know the difference between a laptop or a desktop or a server. I had no technical expertise, but I had lots of general management skills. I'd worked overseas for a while, had been very successful in leadership positions, and they were recruiting people with that skill set. And they said, "We can teach you the hardware business and how to do that." But without that training and that understanding of what I do, every aspect of our response, it has to do with some form of computer science or technical aspect from an engineering perspective. And I'm glad I had at least that baseline from a previous job before I got to Experian.
Hmm. Now you talked about the fear, that people have, and I don't know that people have like a realistic view though of um how often data breaches are actually happening. So how frequently do data breaches happen, and how can someone or business anticipate that it's about to happen?
Um, I can tell you that most of the companies that do track and report data breaches will report anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000 breaches that are recorded on an annual basis. But like the iceberg, where you only see about 15% above the water and 85% is below the water, there's many more breaches that go on unreported. Case in point, in the last calendar year, we serviced over 5,100 breaches. So the average consumer got a notification of a breach in the United States about 5 times because
Mm.
there are so many breaches out there and they happen so rapidly. It's really true that it's not a question of if you're going to have a breach as a business, it's when and how are you prepared.
Mm. I like that. That gives a lot of great context for our listeners around what that means. So you know what? I want to ask to go a little bit deeper into that. What is considered a breach? Is it just like maybe somebody was attempting to hack in? Was it like somebody got hold of your password? Was it like how do we define? I mean, I would think that we understand that, but when I hear you mentioning how many there are on an annual basis, I wonder like what is considered a breach?
It's a question that has multiple answers, Shelly, because the requirement to notify a person that have had a breach can come from both the state laws. It can come from the federal government in the case of healthcare breaches under HIPAA and HITECH and the Office of Civil Rights, which enforces that. We also have 40 countries that speak to notification laws in some way, shape, or form. But if you take those three large blocks, it boils down to if there is a significant enough risk of harm to an individual because their information, whether it's username and password, credit card information, social security number, government ID or background information, if it rises to the level that will cause harm to the consumer, you as the responsible party need to inform the consumers or the employees or the patients or the constituents that you've had a data breach. That's in its simplest form.
Okay. What are some steps? Well, okay, wait. One more question about what you do at Experian. So your role at Experian is not just about like data breaches that may potentially come to Experian, but about clients and businesses who are who may be experiencing breaches and actually get experience help with it. Is that right? Is that how
Yes,
that
so
works?
you're right on the track there with how a breach comes down. An organization will have a data incident. They're not sure if it rises to the level of a notifiable breach, but they'll get outside counsel that will tell them how to prepare a response and make that determination. And we actually contract directly with that client, the organization that had the breach. And on their behalf, we'll mail letters out or send emails or put up a substitute notice on a website. We'll set up a call center with agents that can actually help the people with answers to their frequently asked questions or enrollment if identity theft protection is provided. And then when we provide identity theft protection, the consumers will sign up with a product that's paid for by the client, and we'll help them for as long as they need with whatever issue, whether it's a credit issue, it's a driver's license issue, it's a stolen passport or breached passport. we're the lifeline with that consumer. So we work both with businesses that pay for our services on the front end, and then in the back end, we're always looking out for the consumer impacted by that incident.
Wow. That's actually, I'm so glad you told us that, because, it's interesting to look at, how much some of the different corporations are doing, and like how you branch out into helping the community. Like or helping consumers or supporting consumers. I actually don't know that I knew that that's the way that it happens. Oh, wow. Thank you for that. What are some steps that businesses can take towards building protection against against security breaches?
First and foremost, one of the biggest issues is companies should always, even if they never have a breach, they should always have privacy and security training on a regular basis for every employee. And the reason I always start with that is because 85% of the breaches that we service have a root cause in someone doing something that they shouldn't have done. Not having a complex password, putting a non-production server into production, leaving a database that was intended to be put in the cloud in an open bucket on Amazon Web Services, and they forget about it, and oh, wait a minute, we shouldn't have put it up there. It's not because it's hardware or firmware or software that's usually the problem. It's the humans behind it. So everybody needs to be trained. Security needs to be a priority for that company. A couple other things I would say is, in an organization, if you have personally identifiable information, or PII for short, they need to know where that rests. And you'd be surprised how many businesses don't know what's on their servers, where is it located, how much is 5 years old, 10 years old, how much is in the cloud versus terrestrial. It's not knowing where your data is, because if you don't know where it is, how do you know you're controlling it, or who might be already in your data looking at it? A couple other things, Shelly, I would mention. You need to be up to date on the laws that govern you, so that you know your regulator, you know law enforcement. The worst time to meet a regulator or law enforcement is when you've already had a data breach and you're meeting them for the first time. And then I'm a big believer in having cyber insurance. And cyber insurance protects a business in the event that they get hacked, or there's ransomware, or they've had damage to their equipment because someone has tried to shut down the machinery in the back room, so to speak. Cyber insurance, not only because of the way it's structured, will help pay for it, but the cyber insurance companies do a lot to help companies prepare for a breach, just like we do with our clients, so that they're ready no matter what comes to mind.
I know that we're saying the right things because the dog agrees.
Yes, that's right. And I'm back in the farthest bedroom I could get away.
It's okay.
And she still found me, and she's still barking at the door.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
You know what? This is real life right now, and this is why I love it so much. Like, the quarantine has really showed us how human we are. And just when we think we're doing all the kind of like the ways we were taking ourselves so seriously, our children run into the live, our dogs bark through conversations. It is just, in my opinion, one of the most human moments we can have in society right now. So I love it. This is good. So, because you have me thinking now, I would love to be able to offer to our community at some point, that security training that you talked about. Do you know of, and I mean, you don't necessarily have to recommend anyone in particular. I don't know if Experian does this, but the actual training of of how to help your employees be more secure.
Well, we have at our main website, which is www.experian.com/data breach. It's really easy. It's a one-stop shop. So we have everything from a basic workbook that will take any company and work them through all the steps, including training their employees, including setting up a response team, who to put on there, how to do it, what do you do in the first 24 hours. Resources like that, white papers, all the way up to a full service. You could have a consultant help you, which is a paid for service, but most of the stuff I'm talking about is available free. You just need to go to the website, you can download it, and it's really good for someone that asks you the question, gee, Shelly, I don't know where to start or how to do it. If they go to that website, they can see the materials, pull them down. And there's also a phone number. If you have any questions, my team's always available. It's not going to cost you anything, but if you say, hey, I downloaded the data breach response guide, which we're now in our 9th year of doing it, we'll point you to the right things. We'll stay on top of that. We're happy to help out in any way. But go to the website first and see what you need. And then if you have to call or you can send an email in, we'll be glad to help you.
Wow. Well, that was good to know. Experian.com/data breach.
Yes, /data breach, but either way. Just as long as you put a slash in there, you'll get
that. Yeah. One of the slashes. That was okay. That's so good to know. So yeah, I think I will do that. I'll go check it out and get that handbook because I think it's so important and it's interesting because it's user error. And I think one of the things that everybody keeps thinking about is like, ooh, well, like somebody from somewhere distant is gonna, be hacking into my machine. So I have to make sure but not thinking about ways that we could prevent it by just being a little bit more aware of some of the vulnerabilities in which people enter or attempt to breach. So that's awesome. If a security breach does happen, what are some of the ways that companies can provide quality customer service and ease the frustration and worry? I know we can hire Experian.
Yes, that was my first answer, but thank you. I appreciate you jumping in there. It's better when the host says and endorses you than you endorse yourself.
Right. What could be some other ways?
We're a very tight-knit industry and have a lot of expertise. So the couple things that I would recommend for any business owner is to say, check for recommendations. Ask people in names of data breach response vendors or forensics companies or attorneys are always going to be recommended. The best ones get the recommendation. There's plenty of research material available on the dark web. If you just put in data breach vendor, forensics vendor, privacy attorney, and they'll come up. I would also look, once you do some research, I would look for the people that have the most experience, that have done it over and over again, not just big ones, but the small ones as well. And Experian does any size breach. Of that 5,100 we did this past year, the smallest one was quantity 1, the largest one was 47 million people. So it really kind of depends. And then the last two things, when you check about a vendor, because you have to respond so quickly and to meet regulatory requirements to get the consumers informed, you've got to have someone who has the capacity and the expertise so that you have agents and products that are available that are really going to satisfy the consumers.
Oh, wow. Okay. What is one of the questions that you get most about data breaching?
The biggest question is, I only know so much, and we have lots of questions that we ask our clients before we start to respond. There's generally about 30 questions that we want to know. How it happened, why it happened, how many people were affected, what data was compromised, what's the demographic age range of the people, are there any deceased individuals, minors with minor children, the list goes on. And the number one question we get asked is, can you help me even though I don't know the answers to all your questions right away? And we say, yes, absolutely. It's an evolutionary process, but as you know, based on your forensics work, both internally and externally, or talking to your outside privacy counsel, we're here for you. We will walk with you. We can handle any situation. And of course, like a lot of crisis events, a breach that starts out on a Monday looking like this, maybe on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, might have morphed into something different. More people, oh, we found that other server that we didn't think was compromised. It has 10,000 extra names, all of the above. But Experian, that's what we do. We're good in the crisis, and we can guide clients through that. So they need that reassurance just as much as the consumer that actually lost the information.
Okay, awesome. Is there any type of like, I know, and there may be the answer may be no, but I feel like what, people are always looking for some kind of like silver bullet kind of thing, like the putting the bar on your on your steering wheel, where it's like, oh, okay, nobody will steal the car now, or like, doing some type of life lock. I think it's called. I can't remember. It's called
Mm-hmm.
life lock. But those kinds of things, like, do those kinds of efforts really really help? Like, is that the way that consumers and businesses should be thinking about going? Like, making sure they have this kind of mechanism in place that's gonna like give them the max protection wall that they could possibly get up front, and they're paying for that monthly.
The two answers I'll give you, and I'll start with the consumer first. You mentioned LifeLock. They're now Norton LifeLock. They provide a very robust identity theft protection product for individuals. And as a consumer, we have our product, which is Identity Works. We provide to the consumer. It monitors the dark web. It'll monitor your lines of credit. It can also monitor other driver's license, passport, government credentials. We always recommend, if you have the opportunity in a breach to get a product, sign up for it. It's your best protection, not only to monitor, but our secret sauce is we have a couple hundred trained resolution specialists. They actually sit predominantly in Allen, Texas, just up the road from me. And they're the phone a friend person that you call and say, oh my gosh, I've got this issue. I don't know what to do. I've seen the alert on my laptop. Help me. We're the people, or I should say the resolution specialists are the people that will help you no matter what the issue is and how long it takes. And once you sign up for an Experian product, one of our breach products, you can call in for as long as you need it. Even though your monitoring membership may be for 1 year or 2 years, you can call down the road 5 years later, no charge, we'll take care of you. So that's always recommended on an individual basis. The one and most important thing a company can do in terms of preparing or holding, your hands up as best you can to stop that breach is being prepared. Breaches are going to happen, but we've seen that companies that have a plan and have practiced a plan and are ready to go, when they do have a breach, the cost of the breach is about 25 or 30% lower if they've prepared versus not preparing. And the breaches are smaller in size or less impactful. So instead of having a multi-100,000 person incident, you might have a 2,000 person incident because you're better prepared. You're better prepared not only to respond, you've done your software, your antivirus, your firewall protection, you have your data backed up in case you have a ransomware attack. You do all those things in advance. So it's a bit of the Boy Scout analogy. If you pack the extra stuff in your bag and you're prepared, you can go camping anywhere. If you're prepared for a data breach, even though you're going to have one, you'll come out on the other side much better than you would versus, oh, it'll never happen to me. I know it hit other companies. You can't take that attitude. You've always got to be prepared.
Yeah. This has been great. This is really good. So is there anything that you would like to leave our viewers with doing? Like any like a final call to action that you might have?
On a personal basis, the best thing that I can recommend is we see so many breaches where it starts with someone's username and password being compromised. So don't reuse your passwords. Use a password manager that will create a difficult password, and you only have to remember one because it's locked in a vault in the cloud, and it's very secure. So I'm a big believer in password managers for individuals. From a company perspective, I'll go back to the one thing. Since 85% of the breaches are from people doing stupid stuff, what we should do is make sure companies invest in, at least semi-annually, every employee should go through privacy and security training that's specific for their job. An administrator in the back room for IT needs different training than, let's say, the frontline salesman. But they all need to be suspicious and accountable and watch out for things. And then the last thing for both businesses and consumers alike, don't click on any links. Don't answer any phone calls from unsuspecting people. There's so many scams going around now for the pandemic, for this recent weather incident in Texas. You just have to be very wary.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Michael. This has been super helpful. Everyone,
I'm
Michael
so glad
Bruemmer,
I came.
Thank you for coming. The Vice President of the Experian Data Breach Resolution Group. I feel like our audience is going to really appreciate this episode because, like I said, we're always, I think we get the letters in the mail and you don't know all of what it means. And you definitely don't know all of the things that are going on in the background to help fix it. So this is a really great insight to all the things that are going on. We appreciate you. We'll let your dog have you back.
That's right. Thank you for being patient with me, Shelly. I really enjoyed spending the time with you, and I'm glad if anybody, again, goes to our site, www.experian.com/data breach. Everything's there in one place.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you. Thanks for joining us, Disruptors, and congratulations. You have taken another step toward being friggin' amazing. Make sure you visit us at adoseofdisruption.com, where you can subscribe to the show in iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or via RSS feed. Rate and subscribe if you're all the way live. Rate and subscribe if you're all the way live. That's right. Tell a friend, rate and subscribe to keep us all the way live. Come back next week so we can disrupt some more shit.